going to have to introduce two wonderful people that met by coincidence, but none of their discussion is going to be by coincidence. First and foremost, I would like to take the pleasure to introduce Professor Grzegorz Wojcik. And to be honest, from the bio that I read, he also has the teacher DNA in his system. And welcome to the stage. So a little bit about Professor Wojcik. He started out as a teacher here in Lublin, and he has gone on to win very many individual as well as team-oriented accolades. Professor Wojcik specializes in the field of computational neuroscience and quantitative electrocephalography. I hope I got that pronunciation right. And holds a doctorate degree in computer physics and habilitation in biocybernetics, biomedical engineering. He's an associate professor and head of the Department of Intelligent Systems and Data Science, the head of two postgraduate studies, Big Data Engineering and Cybersecurity of Computer and Telecommunication Systems at the Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology in Warsaw. And most importantly, he's our associate professor and head of the Department of Neuroinformatics and Biomedical Engineering in the Institute of Computer Science at Maria Curie Skłodowska University in Lublin. And his counterpart for this discussion will be none other than Professor Oren Shriki, as we met him before from the keynote speech from Ben Gurion University of Negev. He's the head of the Department of Cognitive and Brain Sciences. He's a distinguished distinguished scientist in the area of developing innovative diagnostic tools for neurological and psychiatric disorders. Just in a nutshell, I won't really go back to the previous introduction, but just enough to get you interested, to get you to remember what he had talked about earlier. And he will be sharing the stage with Professor Wojcik, and they will be talking about, they will engage and discuss with us the success story of their research project titled Investigating Cortical Activity in Patients with Post-COVID-19 Brain Fog. This project was financed by the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange under the agency grants. So ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our two discussants today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, for your presentation, for and organizers for inviting me here for this wonderful event. In my part of presentation, I'd like to tell you the story what we did regarding the post-COVID-19 brain fog and how we met with Oren, how it happened that we achieved some results, have common paper actually, and new opportunities, new ideas for cooperation in future. And this wouldn't happen without lots of coincidence and also without the support of Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange. We usually call it NAWA here in Polish, as they announced, the competition called NAWA Agency Grants. It was almost not known before in this country, and NAWA was the first institution who decided to give such a support for rapid research for something that is crucial and very important and is observable, measurable and researchable at the particular moment of history. Maybe it's not a good example, but if someone is investigating earthquakes, so these sad days, the Turkey is right place to do the research, and now and never again, probably, and hopefully never again. And the same happened with pandemics. We all know what happened and how it affected the whole world, our life, how it changed our life. So we decided to apply for investigation of so-called brain fog phenomena. I will tell about the symptoms of brain fog later on in my presentation, but due to these constraints of the competition, we needed to find a foreign partner to act fast, and then we met Ola, mentioned by Professor Shriki, who was a kind of matchmaker, and we realized soon that we have so much in common with Oren, so we decided to apply. We're here in Lublin, and Oren at Ben-Gurion University of Negev in Beersheba, Israel. For me, it was also a great personal experience and a kind of magic, as I was many times before in Israel in my scientific career, and having opportunity to do something together with partners from Israel was for me both interesting, fascinating, and even before applying, I knew we will win this support because of this coincidence and of this magic and everything that was surrounding our idea. And fortunately, we won. In June 2021, we won this support, and I thank a lot Nava for this opportunity for us. And what is the COVID-19 brain fog? It starts about 3 months after recovery from COVID. So if you survive, if you get over, so 3 months after recovery, in 60 up to 80% of patients are typical symptoms that last for 9 months and are not classified neither in DSM-5 nor in ICD-10, and the symptoms are typical. Something like memory problems, inability to focus and concentrate, or something, difficulty in processing information, troubles in problem solving, feelings, confusion or disorientation, having hard time calculating different things, diminished visual and spatial skills, trouble finding words. Maybe some of you experienced the brain fog symptoms, hopefully not. But there are many people who, after recovery from the COVID, couldn't recognize friends on the street saying hi, couldn't name objects, or were losing way to work even though they were going the same way for 20 years or more. This happens that it is classified as a brain fog, but we still don't know a lot about the etiology of such behavior. It's not officially classified as a disease. So that's why it was interesting. Why was it a good candidate for Argent Grant? Because we had only 9 months after the 4th wave of pandemics just to notice this. Now it would be hard because the COVID is not as terrifying as it used to be 2 years ago. So that's why it was appropriate candidate for this urgency grant, and we were working under a very hard and strong time pressure because collecting the cohort of subjects who suffered from COVID-19 and suffered from the brain fog wasn't easy in the time of pandemics, and on the other hand, we had to have them more than 100. As it was planned in the project idea to do their EEG and so on. So, why is it interesting and why is it important at all? Because almost all of us suffered from COVID. COVID-19 attacked mainly lungs, but as we will see, as we know from other research and other papers, it also could have changed a bit our brains. So what's so strange in COVID-19, in SARS-CoV-2 virus, that it changes the brain activity, so probably it changes also the brain. And if it is possible to predict the brain fog, I get over COVID-19, so go somewhere and they put me to machine and say, okay, you are this guy who is going to have the brain fog. You should avoid this, and that. Eat healthy, move a lot, so you will avoid COVID, brain fog. So the opportunity I told you about, it was NAVA agency grant, the hot topic, the foreign partner. We found Oren, and we started. So I know that not all of you are good in, feel comfortable in the field of neuroscience, of computational neuroscience. So generally speaking, I know we don't have a lot of time. The brain is the most complex system in the known universe we know so far. The fundamental computational unit in brain is neuron. We have 100 billion of them. This is the 11th part, the 11th power of 10. And each neural cell connects on average with 10,000 other neural cells. So this is the 4th power of 10. So the complexity of the brain is 10 up to 15. So we don't know more complex system in the universe than the human brain. The idea of transmitting signals within neural cells, within neurons, is a very complicated biological, neurochemical mechanism, including transmission of chloride, potassium, and sodium ions, together with lots of neurotransmitters that make the synaptic conductance possible. So each neural cell has such so-called resting potential, minus, let's say, 70 microvolts, and they work, they are playing like crickets, you know, in the meadow. So there is some electricity in these neurons, and if you have a lot of neural cells and a lot of synchronized works of these neural cells, you can register the changes of electrical activity on the surface on the brain. But it's not easy to register this activity, as it is not allowed to do experiments, to conduct experiments on vivid human brains. So we must find methods that will make us make it possible to look into the brain without opening the skull. So having this wonderful object like human brain and having no possibility to touch the human brain, we have to look inside using physical methods. And I'm also a physicist. I also started as theoretical physicist, just like Oren. And later on, after several years, I was dropped by my dean to do the experimental neuroscience because it was also coincidence. The European Union, who built our institute, our building, and equipped it with a dense array EEG system, expected to build scientific group around this. So my dean asked me, a theoretical computational neuroscientist, to start doing EEG, and that's it. So how to watch the brain? Using the neuroimaging methods like magnetic resonance imaging, and here you will see in this building we have the best MRI, one of the best 7 Tesla ultra high field MRIs in the world. This is the Ecotech complex of our university. Maybe this is the idea for future projects, and today we visited this installation together with Orange and have our brains full of ideas. But the lab I'd like to tell you about is my lab, the Laboratory of Electroencephalography, in which we use so-called caps put on the head of the subject and then connected to this so-called amplifier And the idea of this method is that it is very cheap, it's not invasive, and lets us to register the activity of the brain without opening the skull, without any aggressive interaction with subject, just by putting this cap on the head of the patient and recording the activity using this tool. Later, after this experiment, we use the so-called geodesics system, thanks which we can model the shape of the brain of particular subject that participated in the experiment, which makes our lab unique, because there is no something like default brain, because we don't have default identical heads. And if we want to do so-called method like source localization on the brain, we will never know, using the default model of the brain, which electrode is placed on which anatomical structure of the brain cortex. But using photogrammetry geodesic station, it is possible to make the exact model, exact shape of the model of the brain of the particular subject sitting in this gantry, participating in our experiment. So, how to view the thoughts that are traveling across our cortex? So, we decided to suggest few experiments from the field of experimental psychology. Experiments in which we postulated it will be possible to notice some symptoms of the brain fog. And if you want to do the basic science to check how the activity of the brain differs for the people with brain fog, for the people who recovered from COVID-19 and have no brain fog, and for the people who declare they never had a COVID-19. So we built a cohort of 120 participants. 40 of them were with COVID-19 with symptoms of brain fog, 40 of them after COVID-19 without symptoms of brain fog, and 40 people who didn't suffer from COVID-19. Everything was done under supervision of medical doctor who made such a kind of diagnosis and asked them exactly if they are not cheating. We recruited our students, our participants among the students of Institute of Computer Science and Political Sciences and many other, even the quaestor of Maria Curie University participated in our experiments, and I'd like to thank her for the support of our idea. So we have something called research protocols in doing the quantitative EEG, and we decided to choose such experiments. They have special names, and this is, for example, the EEG digit span, where participants were asked to remember and recall from memory sequences of numbers. If they were good, the sequence was longer. If they were bad, the sequence was shorter, and we were not interested when they were remembering the sequences of numbers, but what happens in their brain if they forget. So you can, based on your intuition, you can predict that if someone has a brain fog, so he or she will have difficulties with remembering long sequences of numbers. So probably something will be visible in the EEG digit span experiment. I'd like to mention that all these experiments shown here in this slide are standardized by psychologists, so there is no place, for guessing or something like this. They are designed in such a way so that the statistics, if calculated, was okay, and nobody could tell that we are doing something that is not in line with good scientific practice. Another experiment was so-called EEG task switching. Try to imagine that you have two tasks. For example, every 2 slides you have to calculate how many numbers you saw and sum them, for example, and on the other In the other case, you remember how many letters you saw and to count them, something like this. And also face recognition. And finally, after all, we were just registering EEG resting states. For 5 minutes, subjects were doing nothing, sitting with closed eyes, and we were watching just on these EEG lines put into 256 time series. So one such test took about 40 minutes and 2 gigabytes of data. This data was put in CSV file, something like Microsoft Excel spreadsheet with 257 columns, one for each electrode and the last one for time, and the probing was 500 times per second, sometimes 1000 times per second. So we had to build a so-called data science pipeline just to analyze this data, to make the protocol. I would say such experiment for one subject usually took 40 minutes. It was 2 gigabytes of data, and to analyze one subject, it required also about 12 hours of signal cleaning by one of my assistants. And we had 120 participants, so you can imagine how this is time-consuming, doing such research. And this answers your possible questions, why only 120? So we built this data science pipeline, and in May, still doing the research here on the place, we went to our partners, to Ben Gurion, and had a brainstorm with Oren and his group. What will be the best way to analyze this signal, what we are going to do here in Lublin, how to transfer in safe and anonymous way the signal there to Israel, and what they are going to do using their tools, using their experience. Oren is a perfect scientist. He is my idol. He works also for NASA and doing his EEG for astronauts on the space station. He didn't mention this. So he knows about the EEG a lot. And our first impression, our first, great point of satisfaction of this cooperation was that when I took there to Israel my people and met with his group, with his people, we had a lot in common to discuss, even though that we were working on different equipment and using different methods, and we found out that they are complementary, and 1 + 1 is much more than 2, okay? So this was the first result that cannot be measured, but any bureaucratic indicators, but adds value for such forms of cooperations. So we decided that we will calculate so-called event-related potentials here in Poland, and then they will try to classify the collected signal using machine learning classifiers. And it turned out it works. Here I will show you several plots from our experiments, for example, from the digit span for 2 randomly chosen electrodes, when you can see 3 different plots in blue, green, and red, and they are completely different for the groups of these 3 subcohorts, people who have brain fog, had COVID and have no brain fog, and never had COVID and never have had brain fog. This is from the digit span, first of this experiment. Another example from task switching. They are more similar, but the differences are also noticeable, and from the face recognition. As far as the classification of the signal is concerned, it was done by the group of Oren. Here we can see with naked eye that we get different plots for different groups of people in the spectra of having brain fog, not having brain fog, and being completely healthy. But they put the AI methods, so-called linear discriminant analysis, to look into our signal, and it turned out that it is possible to distinguish the brain cortical activity using such tools. Application of machine learning classifiers turned out to be the most useful when they were looking for the EEG resting states. So remember, for the case where subjects were sitting with closed eyes and we were just recording their brain activity, brain cortical activity. So the efficiency of classifiers was 70%, and EEG methodology 70% is very good result. With being 70% sure, we can tell, looking at the brain cortical activity, if someone had COVID or not. Probably even in case when he doesn't know he had COVID in future. Probably we are investigating because you could have no symptoms. We can tell if your brain cortical activity is characteristic for the brain fog or not. And for this application, very nice method, so-called avalanche analysis, a bit that was mentioned a bit by Professor Fricke during his presentation in the morning, was applied. And one another added value, that the methodology that was worked out there in Israel was good for our signal and confirmed our results on using different algorithms. So on the 14th of January, we received a very good news, because in one of these leading journals in our field, our paper was accepted, and we have the first paper. We have the evidence that we were right. Our hypotheses were positively verified and recognized by international scientific community. So we are very excited about this, and definitely will not stop our cooperation. Going to the summary, what are the benefits of this project? First of all, the scientific benefit, that we have positively verified the hypothesis that it is possible to tell the difference between different cortical activities characteristic for these three subcohorts. I will not mention them again. We also proved that it is possible to classify this activity using linear discriminant analysis and avalanche analysis there at Ben Gurion. We have the cooperation and, of course, a friendship. This is why this lecture in the morning was so important, and human relations are sometimes, in my opinion, are always more important than scientific results. We have professor here today that we are also very, very happy of this. And we have positively verified the methodologies of each other, of our two groups, in independent labs, working at the same signal, but with completely different methods, with completely different group of people, achieving very similar or the same results, and we have some ideas for the future. And the last slide, once again, I'd like to thank very much Dava, without the support of which it would be impossible to do such wonderful things, in my opinion. Thank you very much. And I think that a few words of comments from my partner, Professor Oren, just to sum up my presentation before questions.
Thank you very much, Grzegorz. I think you presented wonderfully. I'll just add that everything was done under a very strong time pressure constraint. Because we had to submit the paper, there was a concrete deadline, so we worked hard. And on the one hand, maybe we could have done more analysis, a more thorough analysis of the data, but we had to finalize and submit at some point. But so I view it as definitely a start, because we can apply many more analyses to the same data. And I should say that it's a very heroic project on the side of Gregor's lab, because collecting 120 data sets, this is, I mean, he says EEG is cheap and all that, but it is a relatively expensive machine, 256 sensors. It takes time to put. And collecting all this data, only collecting the data, it's a heroic effort in itself. And then analyzing is on top of that. And these are very interesting data. And I believe we can do many things with them. You know, in the future, we can also see if we can tell from the EEG if someone was from computer science or political science.
Definitely,
other categories, not just the COVID-19. Okay, yeah, that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oren, and I'd like to add that even though the project ended, the signal is still present in our labs. So even if the pandemic changes, we have the signal for many years of investigations and publishing based on it new papers. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Okay, oh, we have a quick question right there from Brian.
Thank you for your really interesting research. I've learned something new today. But I have a question regarding the COVID symptoms and the whole the COVID. Because I remember we had some scenarios or situations about the test kits being maybe fake or something. And another issue is about the symptoms. What about the patients who did not have symptoms? And because sometimes the test kit could say you're negative, and then after 48 hours or 24 hours tells you you're positive. So how did you deal with such irregularities with, let's say, a patient or with the testing kits? Thank you.
So it was impossible to omit all mistakes, I'm sure, but recruiting subjects to the control group, to the people who had never COVID, we were trying to invite people who really have never symptoms, had negative tests, and probably from the environment, like families or friends, that also suppose they had no COVID. And the interrogation of medical doctor asking about the history of infections in last months let us predict with high probability that they really had no COVID. If they had COVID without symptoms and with negative test results, so this was mistake, but I think not many people were in such conditions. Probably that's why the classification accuracy is 70%, not 95% or something like this. Thank you for your question.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. Now we have another question from Professor Kamil.
Thank you very much. It's me again. Sorry for that. I have a question regarding the technical part of the research. Could you tell us a little bit more about the classifiers you applied to recognize the patterns? Because we've seen the LDA, which is one of many methods we can apply. What about the others? Did you have any kind of comparison that could show us?
I'll tell you what were the considerations that we took into account. So 120 subjects is a relatively large cohort. It's already a very complex project in terms of EEG, but essentially you have 120 data points, and now you want to train on part of the data, you want to test on another part of the data, so ideally you want to leave some of the subjects outside for a test set, train the classifier on part of the data. So it's very hard. So for example, when I take data from patients with epilepsy, I want to know if a period of EEG is within a seizure or not inside the seizure, an epileptic seizure. So even data from a single patient, I can make out of it hundreds or thousands of samples, not inside a seizure, inside the seizure, and train a classifier. But here, essentially, each subject is a single data point. So we want to extract some features, some measures of brain activity, and then train a classifier. So we decided, in order not to cheat, in order not to, what we call in machine learning, overfit, not to do overfitting, to decide in advance on multiple, on a few measures. And because we knew that some of the characteristics of brain fog are related to, are similar to some disorders that involve issues related to what we call excitation and inhibition in the brain, things that happen in aging, like dementia. We decided to focus on certain measures, and we even made things as simple as just taking two measures, two important measures that characterize the whole thing. Because if we would work naively, there are 256 sensors. Typically what we do in my lab, we extract like 8 to 10 features per channel. This is already 2,000, more than 2,000. And then we extract additional spatiotemporal measures of the collective behavior. We wouldn't have enough data to train the machine learning. So we just took two measures that represent the global brain activity, and we used LDA, which is the simplest classifier. You don't need many parameters, so you don't need a lot of data in order to generalize. So these were some of the constraints that we have to face. Yeah.
All right, thank you. One more question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I have two questions or maybe comment. The first one, have you been able to localize some area on the brain, in the brain, on the cortex, which are especially responsible for this, effect, brain fog or something like that? Can you say that, okay, in this area there is a responsibility is much bigger than in another one? Did you, okay, could prepare kind of, the brain topography or such answer?
Yes, doing this ERP analysis, when I showed you the plots, I showed you the most interesting probably on the taken of these electrodes that were most differing and showing statistical significantly difference in ERP activity. It is hard to precisely show that the brain fog is in one particular part on the brain. These electrodes, we call them cognitive ones or something like this, are spread across the whole cortex, most of them in the frontal lobe, so probably the lobe associated with our emotions, complex thinking.
Okay, I suppose that the answer will be more or less like you said. But the second question is, already on the market, on the scientific market, we have some special software packages for the, analysis, the signal from this EEG and so on. Do you try to compare the result you obtain here with such, how they can say, ready-made, softwares for this kind of analysis?
The best software is the one we write, we code ourselves, because in such complex machine with 256 electrodes, not each software is appropriate for solving such problems. We used our own Python scripts and commonly known Python libraries for signal processing and analysis. Probably if we wanted to move our tests to clinical methods, we would use some ready solutions. However, this EGI system we use in my lab is a closed system, so there are no additional functionalities. We have to write our own and processes on our own.
Yeah, I mean, we are already using these software tools. There are Python and MATLAB toolboxes for analyzing EEG, but they help you mainly in pre-processing the data, cleaning the data from noise artifacts.
Especially to remove the noise and so on,
And also in extracting features, measures of brain dynamics, the classical ones, the conventional ones. But then if we want some unique properties, we need to write our own in-house code for that. And also they do not include machine learning. But then again, there are many existing tools for machine learning that we can use. So we integrate, essentially we integrate these tools. But I think, in this study, we used some conventional methods like ERP and extracting some measures. But the commercial software, they would not, it's not just plug and play, just put the EEG data and it will discriminate between the populations. So we can work with them, but we need to add something from ourselves. And I agree regarding the location. Again, it's also related to the fact that the data are limited, but I think maybe in some future analysis of the data, maybe we can do more. We can take different subsets of electrodes and see which ones are provide the best discrimination. But currently, it seems that frontal lobe is a good guess.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just one more, oh, two questions. The same seat.
Thank you. Dear professors, thank you for that fascinating presentation and this presentation in the morning too. My name is Małgorzata Wójcik. I'm from the Faculty of Biology and Biotechnology, so I'm really impressed by the results you obtained. And I have a question, because it was a huge amount of data that you obtained, and it could be analyzed in 100 different ways. And your aim of the project was very clear, but I was wondering, is it possible to conclude from the results you obtain if vaccination have any influence on the future way of having COVID or not having COVID, and if you have COVID, if that brain fog can follow it, is it diminishing? Most probably, maybe from the interview, you can have some group of patients, of subjects that were vaccinated, not vaccinated. So would it be possible to have another, I know it is completely different way of analyzing data, but maybe it could be concluded from it?
I think we would have to divide our 120 cohort of participants into two groups, vaccinated and not vaccinated. So if it was the normal statistical, range, we would have on average 20% in each group. So it would make it more difficult to calculate any statistics and teach classifiers to compare, for example, the activity of a vaccinated guy with not vaccinated guy having brain fog. In the other hand, we were not allowed by Bioethical Commission to ask whether someone was vaccinated or not. And when we were applying for the project, the vaccinations were invented probably, but not yet obligatory and not so common. In May 2009, we applied in February when there was no vaccination, so we had no possibility to check this. Now the results are anonymized, and it is no possibility to ask them back whether they were vaccinated or not during participation in our experiment.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. It's a pity that the data that we cannot even ask it. I would be really interested in that, but yeah, sad.
Okay, one more question.
So once again, congratulations, and it was a very interesting research, professors. My question is about brain fog. Now that you've identified there's such a condition, so what is going to happen next? Is there any application? Is there any clinical methods that's going to be applied to treat it? Like, what's going to happen in the market?
I think that the pandemic is almost over. I think so. So the brain fog is not very popular and fashionable these days, but it is very similar to something called CFS. This is conscious fatigue syndrome, in Polish syndrome przewlekłego zmęczenia. Some people in working hard in corpos, for example, may have similar symptoms after long periods of hard work. So probably this would be a good idea for applying for new projects and checking, comparing these results with that obtained from the brain fog people in future.
Yeah, and I think that there are also similar symptoms after chemotherapy. So we might be able to apply the same methods to other data where we also see signs of brain fog and compare the data. Maybe we see similar patterns in the EEG, also in people after chemotherapy or after some kind of cognitive fatigue. So I hope we can continue that. But it also shows that you really needed the good timing to collect the data when the pandemic was active. So that justifies the urgency grant, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if in terms of the pandemics, if we have now other applications, if people, new patients with COVID, maybe we could monitor them in the long run. I recently read, there was a paper from a certain group in Israel where they they showed that most of the symptoms, the cognitive symptoms that happen in COVID, they disappear after a year. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, if the data weren't anonymized, we could call the people for a follow-up study and see if after a year the things were gone. If they got back to normal, it would strengthen the findings. But yeah, it's not possible. Yeah, next pandemic. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. So just to reiterate from the conversation here, I'll reiterate on Professor Shriki's presentation earlier, role of coincidence. In this room, I just got smarter a little bit. Number two, I'll reiterate on the words of Professor Vujicic. There is still room for more research, and that means probably the next phase we'll be able to tell the impacts of brain fog on political scientists, biomedical engineers, and that's the way to go. And of course, thank you to our partners, the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange. We hope future cooperations are in place. I'll hand over to Maciek. And again, professors, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A my, drodzy Państwo, przechodzimy już do kolejnego punktu. Teraz porozmawiamy o nauce nad przepaścią, czyli wpływie sztucznej inteligencji na badania i dydaktykę w perspektywie lokalnej i globalnej, o której opowie dr Kamil Filipek, już obecny na scenie. Panie doktorze, w takim razie the floor is yours. Oh, you have also the microphone.
Yeah, I've got everything, thank you. Honestly, I prepared my presentation in Polish, but I can try to tell about it in English. It's not a big problem, but I have to warn you that I didn't even think about this presentation in English. So if I make mistakes, I'm sorry for that in advance. Do you prefer it? Or do you want me to speak English? Do you want me to speak Polish? I mean, it's not. Okay, let's keep English because we've been using this language till now. So I want to talk about the science on the edge, and how AI impacts research and didactics in local and global perspectives. So let me start. The presentation is because of the ChatGPT. We all know what's that. There's a lot of rumor about ChatGPT recently. We've been pumped with different information, how it changes everything. And we've been also bumped with information that it's something which is really breakthrough technology, which was invented by OpenAI. But in my view, the real breakthrough took place much earlier, not recently. So if you look at two very important events in history of AI, we all know those events. First is the Czech win of Deep Blue machine with Garry Kasparov. That time, everyone said, no, it's not a big problem. It's that the machine is not really huge, and we should not be afraid of that. We will be afraid if the machine wins in AlphaGo. 2016, we had a machine that won in AlphaGo game with Korean master. And starting from 2016, in my view, a lot of good research in machine learning took place. And basically, I think that 2016 was a real breakthrough in machine learning and AI, because there were many different labs all over the world who started to work on their own models, and one of them is OpenAI model. Of course, OpenAI is a younger project. That foundation has been starting not that far from now. But it was really convenient to many people to pretend that we don't see the changes around, especially I'm talking about the education. So we had a lot of warnings in books what's going in AI and how it may impact our life in many different dimensions. And these are only a few of them that show that AI will change our life environment, I mean, starting from scratch. So saying that ChatGPT was something revolutionary, in my view, is quite naive, to be honest. So when ChatGPT started to be very popular, many people started to be really surprised. What's going on? How amazing technology it is. Then we've seen a lot of fear, because many companies said, so if there is a tool like ChatGPT, it means that many people working in different departments, they could be replaced by good AI. But again, the goal behind the AI evolution was to replace people if we talk about the commercial sector. I remember the questionnaire, it was made many years ago among the companies from New York Stock Exchange. Most of the CEOs said that we work on AI because we want to reduce the number of people we employ. So you should not be surprised that this is the goal where we go. And finally, we have a panic. So there was surprise, there was fear, now we have a panic. What's going on? ChatGPT is changing everything, where we go, what's the final goal, and where we'll end up in the near future. So you probably also remember this event. It was quite interesting because there was a guy, he described himself as a gamer. I love this job, gamer. And in 80 hours, he trained a model that won the competition. It was kind of a painting picture competition. The award was not really huge, but the thing was very, very interesting. I mean, the event is very interesting for all of us because it showed that AI could successfully compete with the people also in creative arts. Also in creative arts. Because in the past, many people thought that AI will be really good in those routine tasks. It's not true. It doesn't work any longer. Also, creative art are slowly pushed out by AI. So, of course, there are a lot of questions. How should we deal with this event? Who is the author of the painting? Is it AI or is it the guy who trained the model? Well, these are the questions we will be answering for the next few years, I guess. So then we've seen very interesting tweet given by Elon Musk who said that ChatGPT is scary good. So we're not far from dangerously strong AI. And you probably have heard about it, that this technology is really amazing because 1 million users started to use ChatGPT in a few days. It was not even 1 week. As you can see, on Wednesday it was launched, and I saw you in the red letters, it's Monday. On Monday, they reached 1 million users. If you remember, Facebook was previously the most popular technology, but it took 10 months to have 1 million users. Telegram was, after the Facebook was more successful. So some people even said that now what we observe the death of Google, because ChatGPT is better than Google. This is why Sergey Brin recently announced that Lambda, a model, is being tested among the developers because they realize there are a few steps behind the Microsoft and OpenAI Foundation. So shall we panic? That's a basic question. Is it time to panic, or shall we rather think more rationally? So let me show you what do I think about it. For those who are not very familiar with GPT, I've got a great chart on your right. In few words, in few sentences, it's really describe what's GPT about. What does it mean to be generative, pre-trained transformer? Generative, which means that proposes another words in a sequence. Pre-trained, which means that uses a lot of data to be produced. And transformer, which is using very specific architecture. We have encoder, and we have token head decoder, which is coming back with natural language processing. Because everything is in NLP, which is completely different area that's been presented in a previous presentation. So we have enormous amount of data that have been used to train the ChatGPT. And we've got enormous number of parameters that have been used for this ChatGPT. From different articles, we know there are about 175 billions of parameters used. Those parameters could be compared to this connection between neurons, which was showed in the previous presentations. But there is an interesting question: how many layers we have? Because those layers, neurons, they are put into the layers. Then we have a connection between layers. And from the literature, we know it's 96 layers. I asked ChatGPT about it, and he didn't confirm it. He said he is made of 1,750 layers. So basically, even the number of parameters is not the same. So where we are in a very strange situation. Who's right? Those people who write about ChatGPT, or ChatGPT is right? It's kind of cognitive dissonance. We will be facing this kind of dissonance in the future quite often. I'm pretty sure it will happen many times. So be prepared for that. Who's right? But ChatGPT is not always right. We also need to remember that. If we talk about the references, it makes a lot of mistakes. And these are examples of the references produced by ChatGPT. And there's a stream of the discussion on Twitter and on other social media where many scientists show that it's actually producing falsehood. It's not true. Those references, those articles, books, etc., they do not exist in the real life. Be aware of that too. So it's not only about true, it's also about the false. So another question, is ChatGPT so good? And why is so good? I also asked ChatGPT, why are you so good? So he answered me because he's one of the best. I asked in Polish, sorry, I didn't know I would be presenting in English, so I can briefly translate what I got from him. He's one of the best language models made by OpenAI, and he's really having good results in different tasks, etc., etc. And of course, he's understanding natural language and answering the question with great precision. I see Professor Naskrensky. I remember a couple of weeks ago, he visited in my office, and I said to him, could you ask ChatGPT a question from your field? And Professor asked the question, and he was really stunned. He said, wow, I cannot believe it. I would not give the better answer than the ChatGPT delivered. So you see, it's really, really good model. And now we have a more general question. How ChatGPT will influence our science and how actually it influences our science. I have different tasks we all face, being a scientist, being a teachers. And these are only the examples. First of all, if we talk about the mathematical equations, ChatGPT is really effective in that. It's generating the programming code, and it's also very good in that field. We have GitHub, a Copilot tool, and Google already announced the beta tool with Lambda model. Let's see, but the one which is now in our hands is really, really good. It's generating the research questions for us. It's summarizing the articles, the books. It's selecting the scientific articles. It's also analyzing and interpreting the results we have. And of course, it's answering very precisely on the question we pose. And finally, it's writing scientific articles. And we all know that. It's also huge, long, very, very loud debate how to deal with this problem. Nobody knows what to do. And I have an example. I ask a question, could you resolve this simple mathematical question? And he gave quite good answer. The right question should be 2 or 3, but he says it's approximately 200, which means he's right. That's amazing. I also ask about more creative task. Could you generate kind of poetry in a specific rap style of Polish rap, etc.? He said, no problem. Here you have. So you see, the creative task is not a big problem for him. He's really good. So now is a very, very basic question. Shall we ban the ChatGPT in contemporary education? Well, it's not a simple answer, and I'll try to show you the arguments which are in favor and which are against. First of all, those who say, yeah, we should ban it because it's making mistakes. Yeah, of course it's making mistakes, but people are also making mistakes. So we need to be aware of that. And he's answering differently on the same question. That's true. If you ask the same question, it will deliver different answers. People behave quite similar way. And it allows students to cheat the tutors. That's true. And it's turning upside down the contemporary educational system. And finally, is a threat to the humanity, etc. But on the other hand, those who said, no, we cannot ban the ChatGPT, they say, it finally turns our system upside down. And we also need to be aware of that. We're talking about the Bismarck system, which is not effective. We see how our kids suffer in the schools. Maybe this is the time for real change. In my view, we also need to have this kind of perspective in our minds. And those from the business field, they say, what's the point to ban it if we will be using this? So you cannot ban ChatGPT in schools because we will be using in business ChatGPT. We want to have future employees being familiar with that tool. It's not the right way. And finally, those very optimistically oriented, they say it's a chance to go to the next level of human development. I don't know, but let's say that possibility also exists. You remember Ned Ludd? He was also fighting with the steam machine. He was not successful. So it doesn't really make sense to fight with ChatGPT. We should rather try to make it, human-friendly tool. That's a big, that's a huge task in front of us. So you have an examples of articles that have been co-authored by ChatGPT, and they've been already published. Of course, there is a kind of basic question: who takes responsibility for the content that's been generated by ChatGPT? This is what big publishers raise. They say he cannot be the co-author because he's not taking responsibility for the content he's producing. But as you can see, it was already published. It's not really one approach. And what we have, the last thing is a very interesting step-by-step guide to write and publish ebooks with ChatGPT. As you can see, market is not sleeping. It's really dynamic. So now let's think about the global and local approach to AI, to ChatGPT, to AI in more general. What do I think? I don't really believe that kind of global approach to control AI and ChatGPT is possible. Not at all. I think a kind of international agreements are possible. For example, within the EU, that's what we see, Artificial Intelligence Act, etc., but not at the global level. Because the big powers like China, US, they compete and don't really expect that they will speak one voice about AI. So I rather think that law will be produced and implemented at the local level, if we talk about the AI. And we can also expect that the law we have in China, in US, in Europe will be different. So, well, for some people it's a chance, for other people it's a kind of problem that we have with AI if we put too strict law. Let's see. But almost everyone will have to answer very similar questions. And let me show you those questions, because I believe at this stage we should rather formulate right questions. This is the phase we are with AI. If we don't ask the good questions, well, a lot of things will happen behind us. So those questions are related to science, because this is the main topic. I've just divided this into two fields. First is teaching, and the other field is learning. So first of all, let's start with the teaching. Shall we agree, and to which extent, to which degree shall we agree for automated presentation of the content? In academia, in schools, almost everywhere. Then, do we agree, and also to which extent, to control the students by AI? How do they progress? And finally, do we agree students to be assessed by AI, also to what extent? On the other hand, if we're talking about the learning process, we should ask the question, do we agree for automated searching of the content? You know, yesterday I spoke to my colleague. His son is in primary school in Lublin. He said, you know, him and his colleagues, they all use ChatGPT now. Everyone is using ChatGPT, young people. So they already use it in school. So I don't know if we should agree, they already know what to do. So the other question is, shall we agree to process the information by AI? So let's say Now we teach our students to process the information, but now AI can do it for them. So, well, that's a really good question. And finally, can we use the results and the interpretations produced by AI by students? Really, really difficult questions, but that's what I think. And of course, these questions are connected to many other problems, to many, many other problems. I raise only 4 of them: intimacy, privacy, intellectual property rights, and the responsibility for the consequences. You see, I just put different connections, but many other charts are possible here. So, well, it's really a huge problem. We don't know where we go. But now let's imagine how today's teacher looks like, what he does in the school. I was looking for different classification of teachers' functions. One of them is like this. So we have the information function. The other one is educational function. I don't know, nurturing, maybe keep bringing up function, patronal function, motivational, and finally control function. So what does AI in today's world? In my view, AI can cancel most of these functions, as you can see here. First of all, informational function. If it delivers such a good information, do we need teachers? I'm calling it the death of the experts. Yeah, probably many experts will die pretty soon. For some reason, it's really good. If you watch TV, you know what I'm talking about. Then we have a patronal function. You know, you probably heard about the digital twins being developed in Finland, in Estonia. They have very good models that are based on the real data delivered by the citizens, and this kind of models, they tell them how to live, how to resolve different problems, how to answer different questions. So, well, it's possible today also. We have a motivational function. It's not a big problem. I can control your progress and can remind you, you need to do this and this and this, and remember to answer and to finish different things. And finally, is it possible to assess students in an objective way? Wow, this is the most probably difficult question. And I tell you something, it's possible. In my view, it's even the chance. Consider your position in academia. You know these stories that you give the student 5 and the other tutor give 3, let's say. Is it objective approach? In my view, it's not objective because we don't know what are the criteria behind. In my view, AI could be more objective than people. And I'm not optimist. I just want to emphasize that. So what are these scenarios for the future? It's kind of my proposal. I don't know if it's going to happen, but still kind of temporary proposal. There'll be different countries, different approaches to AI. And the first role, in my view, is kind of uncritical pioneer. Because they will be trying to implement AI tool for any price. I'm talking about the social costs. And of course, the profit is really huge because if they win, they can get new patents, licenses, etc., etc. Then I propose another one. It's kind of quasi-pioneer. So they will be quite fast as well, but they will be rather looking at those who are uncritical, and they'll be trying to be more smart, but in fact, it's not the same approach. Then I have quick followers. Followers, well, they won't be that fast as these 2 previous categories, but at the same time, the risk of the AI implementation is much lower for them. But if the risk is lower, the profit is also lower. Then we have a critical adaptator. I really like to emphasize this kind of role because it's kind of alternative to the previous ones. Because those countries who will follow that way, they will think twice, 3 times, even more about the AI tools they have and how to implement them in the educational system. So in my view, the risk is very small for them. Of course, let's say, original in what we do may give us a great economic profit. If we don't follow the right ways, we'll be behind, simply. There's no chance to stop the AI We only need to think how to implement it in the right human-friendly way. So for the end, I have a great citation I took from Henry Kissinger. He was mentioned already here, but here's also Eric Schmidt and Daniel Hattenlocher. Eric Schmidt is from Google and Daniel Hattenlocher is from MIT. So what they wrote, in future, children may grow up with AI assistants more advanced than Alexa's and Google Home that will be many things at once: babysitter, tutor, advisor, friend. Such an assistant will be able to teach children virtually on any language or train children in any subject, calibrating its style to individual students, performance and learning styles to bring out the best. And I believe this is the future. The future is not to stop the AI. Sorry about that. I mean, if I was too optimistic for some of you, you took a wrong impression. I'm very critical about AI, but at the same time, I'm trying to be very realistic where we are and what we can do in the future. Thank you very much.
Drodzy Państwo, czy może macie jakieś pytania dla naszego gościa? Jest pytanie.
Please, we are welcoming questions. English, Polish, everything. Don't worry.
Maybe not everything, but...
Hello, my name is Łukasz Wiechetek.
I know you, Łukasz.
One question about the future of usage of artificial intelligence. I remember that about 20, 30 years ago, especially middle-aged people were learned how to use a computer. Yeah, and I also was was working in some company, and I was a teacher, and I trained how to use a mouse. Yeah, move here, and the cursor will move, and then double click. Wow, double click, something is opening, and then some older guy said, you shouldn't train them how to use. You must think in some years to train them how to not use the computer. And in the computer, we have now this situation. We have to teach our children how to not use. And I think what do you think about this artificial intelligence? Now we are, this is a hot topic, and we show them how to use. But I'm thinking that in 3 years, we have to focus on how to teach them how to not use, because outside this chatbot is also some life. Thank you.
All right, it's a really good question. My primary education is sociology, so I'm very interested in the socialization process and things like that. And I spoke to many of my colleagues what they think about it, and at the moment we really think the way that they need other people, they need interactions, they need society. But if you look at the generation that is rising up right now, I have an impression they don't need us that much as we need it. So it's a matter of 1, maybe 2 generations that we forget about the society we know. Sorry, it sounds very bad, but I don't really think we have kind of optimistic view on the new future in front of us. So maybe, of course, we have kind of detox schools, detox camps, technology detox camps, etc. Maybe we will have to think about AI detox camps. Who knows? I mean, but I have another vision on it. In my view, we need to really rethink what contemporary people do, where are they active, what is really stressing for them, what is boring for them, etc., etc. Maybe we could use these assistants to do different tasks, and we can focus on other tasks. So we should rather think about the other tasks we can do. You probably watched a lot of fantasy movies like future space exploration, etc. They use very intelligent tools doing many things for them. I believe that might be our next step. That's my opinion.
Okay. Oh, just a question here, Brian.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor. I think probably you've answered, but it was more of a general question. Should we be more, I mean, AI is very interesting, and I think the future is AI, as you already stated. But should we be more excited for the future with AI, or should we be more concerned and worried about it?
Well, amazing question. Thanks for that. If we look at China, we should not be excited about AI at all. As you know probably very well, AI supports autocracy and it really kills democracy. We all know that. I mean, the Chinese party uses AI to keep their privileged position. And if we look what's going on around in Russia and other countries, it looks pretty similar, to be honest. So, in my view, we should not be that happy. But of course, it may change. You remember a couple of years ago, kind of paradigm was very, very popular. I'm talking about the smart cities. Recently, many people criticized smart cities because they said this is kind of surveillance city. It's not really smart. We really watch people. We know everything about them. So how smart city it is. So let's see what will happen. The future is very dynamic at the moment, and everything is possible. But I don't really think, I don't really agree with the possibility that we can drop, we can cancel, we can stop AI at the moment. It's impossible.
Okay, just another question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Of course, when we are thinking how we can use such tool, how we can use such instrument, in my opinion, in the first period, in the first time, at the beginning, we should think how we can use it for the, how I can say, intelligent selection of information. I give you one example. I am involved with some patent procedure. So you are inventor, and you want to protect your invention by patent. Okay, you describe your patent and so on to the proper patent office. And then you send it to the patent office, a local patent office, for example, in Poland, or to European patent office, or global, it doesn't matter. And then patent officer must check that your invention is absolutely original, never published before, and never protected in patent. How long time it take? Between 5 to 6, 7 years. 7 years. Why? I checked a few seconds before. When you take the popular patent search engine, the name is Google Patent. If you will write in Google Patent, then you have access to a few tens of millions of patent description. And then if your patent concerns contact lenses, then in this patent Google search engine, you will get more than 100,000 patent description. 100,000 patent description. And now can you imagine responsibility, patent officer in the patent office, which should check purity of your patent to such huge number of patent description. We know that this Google patent engine cover more or less about 5% existing patents in the world. So 5% you have patents in this engine, and then you will get for the word contact lenses more than 100,000 patent description. Yeah? So few people, patent officer, but also experts as me, spent years to check it is new, original, never published before, and so on and so on. In my opinion, people which are very well involved for the creation such engine like a GPT, chatbot, and so on, should find the way how we can support this instrument to be really an expert for the information selection. Yeah, it is also the same problem we can say looking for number of publication and so on and so on. Yeah, but in my opinion, it is the one way because due to the time when we will support this, this system, for the example, for a few years, this system will be better and better. But during this time, we can really efficiently, for the efficient way to use it. This is, in my opinion, the most important field at for the beginning, of such instrument.
Yeah, I do agree. I'm going to tell you, I mean, we're probably finishing now, but very brief story about the patent in UMCS. I have a colleague, she's cooperating with us in Center for Artificial Intelligence, and she approached me a couple of months ago. She said, you know what? 5 years ago, I submitted an innovation, and I was granted with a patent. I don't know what to do now because I'm not interested in the patent anymore. This is the story behind. 5 years time. That took 5 years to accept the innovation she submitted. Thank you very much.
Oh, just one more question.
Yes. So, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I just have a question that may be an open question to you, to all of us. Consider we have an equal competition to ChatGPT. Actually, we have. And my question is whether having the same base of knowledge available to both of these chats, ChatGPT-A and ChatGPT-2, whether it will be possible to conduct a scientific dispute among them, leading to creation of new scientific theories unknown to humanity so far. How do you think? Is it possible in future? Are we far from this? We know the knowledge discovery theories for decades, but they are not very successful yet. However, when we see something like this, I can imagine 2 chatbots just running the academic discussion, leading to new discoveries. How do you think?
I tell you, it's been already done. There is a website called Infinite Discussion, Infinite Conversation. This is the name of the website. And on the one side we have a philosopher Zizek, on the other side is a Herzog, and they speak to each other. And both models are trained on the books, on the works they did. And this is kind of a dynamic conversation. And they really pose new questions. They answer those questions based on the knowledge which is taken from the scientific material. So definitely, I think it's possible. But well, there's so many interesting questions around because we have to introduce measures, how to assess the knowledge which is being produced, or information. Sometimes not knowledge. From information to knowledge is a really long road. But I'm going to say that how to assess the material that is being produced by tools like ChatGPT. When it's good, when it's not good, when it's really, let's say, original, when it's not original. Many questions in front of us. And what is really interesting, AI started to be a domain of not only IT specialists. Finally, AI started to be domain of many different disciplines. And we have to look at AI from different angles. If we don't, that will be a big problem. Thank you very much again.
Tak, drodzy Państwo, brawa się jak najbardziej należą. Dziękujemy serdecznie, Panie Doktorze. A już teraz program Fulbrighta. Drodzy Państwo, program ten to największy program wymiany naukowej i kulturowej między Stanami Zjednoczonymi a innymi krajami, przez wielu uznawanych za jeden z najbardziej prestiżowych. O jego działaniu opowie nie kto inny jak ambasador programu w Polsce, dr Andrzej Demczuk.
Witam serdecznie Państwa i dziękuję za zaproszenie. Celem tego mojego krótkiego wystąpienia jest przede wszystkim obalenie kilku mitów dotyczących stypendium Fulbrighta. Więc w mniejszym stopniu skupię się na tym, co możecie Państwo przeczytać na stronie Fulbrighta. Opowiem pokrótce o wymaganiach i o stypendium, natomiast bardziej na podstawie własnego doświadczenia bycia na stypendium Fulbrighta opowiem o kilku mitach po to, abyście Państwo wychodząc z tego spotkania, jeśli jesteście zainteresowani aplikowaniem o stypendium Fulbrighta, a myślę, że jesteście, abyście wyszli z takim założeniem, z takim nastawieniem yes, I can do it. Bo niestety nadal istnieje takie przekonanie, że jest to poza moim zasięgiem, że jest to bardzo prestiżowe stypendium. To się wszystko zgadza, natomiast ja jestem bardzo dobrym przykładem osoby, która wtedy, kiedy 4 lata temu udałem się na bardzo podobne spotkanie, aplikowała o stypendium Fulbrighta i nie do końca wierzyła w te moje możliwości, natomiast okazało się, że udało się, dostałem to stypendium, byłem w Stanach, a dzisiaj też jestem ambasadorem i chciałbym dać od siebie właśnie to, aby móc jeszcze bardziej osoby, z którymi się spotkam, zmotywować. Więc dokładnie chyba 4 lata temu mój asystent promotora, dr Derek Javis, który właśnie był na wymianie Fulbrighta na UMCS-ie i później przedłużył swoją umowę z uczelnią i pracował tutaj przez prawie 8 lat. Na początku mojego doktoratu powiedział: słuchaj Andrzej, właśnie jest spotkanie Fulbrighta. Dlaczego nie pójdziesz, nie dowiesz się i zaaplikujesz? No i poszedłem. To było na głównym kampusie UMCS-u. Ta grupa osób była dużo mniejsza, ale wśród tej grupy była między innymi pani doktor Ewelina Panas. Nieprawdaż? No właśnie. I kilka miesięcy później aplikowałem. I dzisiaj opowiem o kilku takich rzeczach, które najprawdopodobniej Państwo się nie dowiecie ze strony, tylko właśnie z takich rozmów lub na bazie doświadczeń osób, które były na stypendium. Więc tematem mojej rozprawy doktorskiej, a ja byłem na studiach doktoranckich nauki o polityce w języku angielskim, było transformacyjne przywództwo w Stanach Zjednoczonych Ameryki, czyli Transformational Leadership United States of America. I celem tej mojej rozprawy było badanie cech przywódczych prezydentów Clintona, Busha i Obamy. Więc kluczowym elementem tej rozprawy, a dzisiaj książki wydawanej w Stanach, było to, aby spotkać się z ludźmi, którzy bezpośrednio pracowali z prezydentami, którzy byli blisko niego na wyciągnięcie ręki. Dlaczego? Dlatego, ponieważ ja, bazując na teorii Bassa o transformacyjnym przywództwie, nie skupiałem się na transformacji systemu w cudzysłowie, to też, ale na transformacji człowieka. Czyli w jaki sposób ich przywództwo, ich działanie wpłynęło na ich przywództwo. Czy stali się lepsi w tym, że na przykład lepiej słuchają, lepiej się komunikują, mają indywidualne podejście i to badałem. Więc to było dla mnie kluczowe i wyjeżdżając na stypendium Fulbrighta zaakcentowałem, że ten mój projekt badawczy jest ważny między innymi dlatego, że kluczowym elementem rozprawy i obalenia, znaczy hipotez, udowodnienia i odpowiedzi na pytanie będzie przede wszystkim spotkanie się z tymi ludźmi. I wtedy również wydawało mi się, że to jest taki American Dream trochę, ale później się okazało i zaraz o tym powiem, że nie. Więc pierwsza rzecz, na co należy zwrócić uwagę, że ten ośrodek naukowy, do którego Państwo aplikujecie, nie jest rzeczą najważniejszą. Czyli nie musi to być top league, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Berkeley i tak dalej. W moim przypadku okazało się, że faktycznie ta uczelnia jest w ścisłej czołówce, ale w tej wąskiej dziedzinie, o której rozmawiamy, czyli Public Policy, Security Studies and Presidential Leadership. I aplikowałem do tej instytucji, po części również, i tutaj jest element pewnej internacjonalizacji i kooperacji, ponieważ na wymianie właśnie uniwersyteckiej spotkałem Fu Kuliu, profesora z Tajwanu, który okazało się ma przyjazne stosunki z George Mason University i z tą szkołą, do której aplikowałem, czyli Charles School of Policy and Government. Więc jakby z jego rekomendacji wiedziałem, do kogo się zwrócić. No i zwróciłem się i tak jak w wielu przypadkach, za chwilę o nich opowiem, nie czekałem kilku godzin, nawet pamiętając tej różnicy czasowej, jak te osoby do mnie odpowiadały w mailach. Co więcej, ci najbliżsi współpracownicy prezydentów zgadzali się na rozmowę ze mną również. I tylko w kilku przypadkach, przepraszając, się nie zgodzili, co było dla mnie w ogóle fenomenem. Więc jest to niesamowite doświadczenie. Co prawda, mając 19 lat, na początku lat 90., wyjechałem do Stanów, a nie poszedłem w ślady mojej mamy, która jest lekarzem i chciała koniecznie, żebym został lekarzem, więc przez pierwsze pół roku pracowałem jako społecznik w Seattle w stanie Waszyngton, a później przedłużyłem sobie wizę, studiowałem, pracowałem i po 10 latach wróciłem do Polski. Ale później miałem przerwę od badań naukowych. Czyli pomimo tego, że otrzymałem w Stanach tytuł Bachelor in International Studies, to dopiero po kilkunastu latach nostryfikowałem ten dyplom i zachęcony właśnie profesorem Pietrasim, którego dzisiaj już tutaj nie ma, mówię, panie Andrzeju, pan na dobry początek, otwieramy kierunek Doctor in Political Science in English. Dlaczego nie? I aplikowałem. Więc wracając do mojego wyjazdu. To jest Schar School of Policy and Government przy George Mason University. To zdjęcie nie jest najlepsze. Natomiast co jest ważne w wyborze ośrodka akademickiego? Czyli przede wszystkim to, że będziecie Państwo aplikujący, czy jako studenci, czy jako naukowcy, czy jako doktoranci, bo do takich osób jest stypendium skierowane przede wszystkim, abyście udowodnili, że osoby, z którymi będzie współpracować, będą mieli dla Was czas, że ten czas będzie jak najlepiej wykorzystany, bo nie zawsze to ma miejsce, prawda? I kolejnym atutem tej uczelni jest to, że ona jest na wyciągnięcie ręki do Kongresu, do White House, do innych obiektów. Co więcej, w rankingu jest na 7. miejscu w Stanach Zjednoczonych, między innymi dlatego, ponieważ wśród naukowców pracujących są byli dyrektorzy CIA, FBI, ambasadorzy i inne osoby, które blisko z prezydentami, których ja badałem, współpracowali. Więc to było dla mnie bardzo dużym atutem. To jest Dean Rosell, który zgodził się na mój przyjazd, mój opiekun naukowy, i w wymiarze właśnie kooperacji, w jaki sposób te przyjazne stosunki, ten personal taki relationship później wydaje owoce. W ramach współpracy pomiędzy UMCS-em i Instytutem Nauk o Polityce a George Mason zgodził się na przyjazd, aby rozmawiać o tej współpracy i przeprowadzić kilka wykładów w czerwcu tego roku. Ale do tego później wrócę. Czyli to była ta moja główna osoba, która się mną opiekowała i która również na samym początku z rekomendacji przedstawiała mi do osób, z którymi chciałem się spotkać, porozmawiać i później ten wywiad wykorzystać w swojej dysertacji. Nomen omen tych osób było ponad 20, czyli nie tylko najbliżsi współpracownicy prezydentów, ale również profesorowie, naukowcy, którzy badają ten temat. Więc ja, powołując się na te książki, no było dla mnie zupełnie innym wymiarem spotkać się z tymi ludźmi i bezpośrednio z nimi porozmawiać, prawda? Mam twoją książkę, cytuję ci, ale tak naprawdę porozmawiajmy o tym i o tym, czyli posłuchać ich opinii. Pamiętajmy o tym, że ja wyjechałem 17 grudnia w całym w szczycie epidemii, czyli na dobrą sprawę na wizie dyplomatycznej, więc naprawdę różne rzeczy się dzieją, różne okoliczności, natomiast Fulbright, też o tym za chwilę będę mówił, zapewnia pełną opiekę, pełną, nawet w takich sytuacjach ekstremalnych jak COVID, o którym tutaj dziś rozmawialiśmy. Więc to jest jeden z generałów, z którym przeprowadziłem rozmowę. Te wywiady były wszystkie, odbywały się albo osobiście, albo na Zoomie, albo telefonicznie. I on akurat był dyrektorem CIA, pracował w administracji George'a Busha. Natomiast tutaj zadziałał pewien efekt snowball effect. Czyli ja miałem przygotowaną listę osób, z którymi chcę rozmawiać, natomiast tak na dobrą sprawę po zakończonym wywiadzie prosiłem o rekomendacje. Więc to było od jednej osoby do drugiej, kolejnej. Kolejną osobą, z którą rozmawiałem, był Leon Panetta. Leon Panetta pracował jako White House Chief of Staff dla Billa Clintona, później był dyrektorem CIA i sekretarzem obrony dla Baracka Obamy. i kolejne osoby, nie będę ich wszystkich wymieniał, natomiast no, dla mnie to było niesamowite doświadczenie, bo przecież 2 czy 3 tygodnie po moim przylocie mieliśmy atak na Kapitol, więc miałem okazję być bardzo blisko, mieszkałem dosłownie kilka mil od samego miejsca i przeprowadzać wywiady, którzy tam byli. Więc to był dodatkowy element tego pobytu. Natomiast stypendium Fulbrighta otwiera drzwi. I byłem tego świadkiem w Stanach Zjednoczonych, że na hasło Fulbright faktycznie te drzwi się szeroko otwierają, ale również i później, dzisiaj, kiedy mówię o tym, to nadal ten efekt działa i to w dobrym tego słowa znaczeniu. Więc kilka podstawowych informacji, a później kilka informacji od siebie. Więc jest to największy program wymiany naukowej, program, który wspiera wymianę wiedzy i doświadczeń, zwiększając wzajemne zrozumienie między narodami. Za sukcesem programu Fulbright stoją absolwenci i absolwentki, blisko 4000 naukowców, artystów, dziennikarzy, polityków. Wiele by tutaj wymieniać, jeśli chodzi o Polaków, to między innymi profesor Balcerowicz, profesor Belka, ale też wielu innych. W Polsce program Fulbrighta obecnie jest nieprzerwalnie od 1959 roku. I ze stypendium Fulbrighta skorzystało już ponad 3000 polskich studentów, badaczy i nauczycieli akademickich. Ja pozwolicie Państwo, że przewinę niektóre slajdy, ponieważ skupię się tylko na tym, co jest najważniejsze. Więc jakie możliwości daje stypendium Fulbrighta? Wyjazd do Stanów i poznanie kultury amerykańskiej, reprezentowanie Polski, podjęcie studiów lub prowadzenie badań naukowych i nawiązanie współpracy. I teraz, co tak naprawdę jest najważniejsze? Nie będziemy się skupiać na kryteriach formalnych, tylko zobaczymy, jakie są priorytety i kogo Fulbright szuka. Więc pierwszą rzeczą bardzo ważną jest to, że sam projekt naukowy nie jest najważniejszy. On oczywiście jest ważny i stanowi duży element procesu rekrutacji, natomiast nie jest najważniejszy. Na co również Fulbright patrzy? Przede wszystkim na taki multidimensional, czy takie szerokie spojrzenie, bo 2 dokumenty stanowią aplikację, czyli personal statement i project. W tym personal statement, czyli tak naprawdę w opisie własnego życiorysu, jest ważne to, abyśmy opowiedzieli o sobie i przedstawili siebie w prawdzie, ale przede wszystkim Fulbright szuka osób, które nie są skupione tylko na jednej rzeczy, czyli tak naprawdę nie stricte naukowców, ale osób, które są aktywne, otwarte, które oprócz pracy na przykład naukowej również udzielają się społecznie, charytatywnie, prowadzą różne organizacje, fundacje. I to było wtedy moim dużym atutem, ponieważ po moim powrocie w Stanach w 2000 roku do 2014-15 byłem zaangażowany w różne rzeczy, które albo tworzyłem, albo współtworzyłem. Fundacje, stowarzyszenia i przedsiębiorczość, bo nadal rodzinną firmę prowadzimy. Więc to zaakcentowałem oprócz tego projektu naukowego. Więc skoro Fulbright jest dedykowany po pierwsze do studentów, którzy kończą licencjat i mogą na przykład i chcą wyjechać na studia do Stanów, ale również do doktorantów i pracowników naukowych, to warto o tym pamiętać, aby to wybrzmiało w tym personal statement. Czyli tak jak powiedziałem, widzimy tutaj osób aktywnych w środowisku akademickim, osób reprezentujących wszelkie dyscypliny studiów objęte programem, osób reprezentujących różnorodne środowiska, różne regiony i miasta. Mile widziane są projekty, w których pisany jest transfer wiedzy, ciekawych świata, zainteresowanych Stanami, otwartych, kreatywnych. Bo na koniec, co jest dla komisji ważne i dla naszego sukcesu, a mianowicie to, że myślimy o tym win-win, jak to Amerykanie mówią. Czyli, że oni będą wygrani, ale i my również. Czyli, że my będziemy godnie reprezentować nasze państwo, ale równocześnie po powrocie do Polski, na bazie naszych doświadczeń, będziemy pamiętać o tym, aby dobrze mówić o Stanach Zjednoczonych, prawda? W cudzysłowie. uczestnicy programu Fulbrighta otrzymują. I to jest kolejny pewien mit, być może nie wszyscy o tym wiedzą. Skoro stypendium jest dedykowane do osób w różnym wieku, z różnym doświadczeniem i też różnym statusem, to proszę nie zapominać o tym, że stypendium zabezpiecza nie tylko mój pobyt, ale na przykład całej mojej rodziny. Włącznie z małżonką, z dziećmi, ze wszystkimi. Pobyt, przelot, zakwaterowanie na miejscu, więc jeśli jest taka konieczność, jeśli jest taka potrzeba, to absolutnie to nie będzie minusem, wręcz przeciwnie, może być plusem. A ponieważ stypendium jest dosyć długie i optuje od 3 do nawet 10 miesięcy, uwaga, z możliwością przedłużenia, będąc tam na miejscu, więc jest to bardzo ważny element, o którym trzeba pamiętać. Czyli oprócz tych rzeczy podstawowych, to przede wszystkim pokrycie pełnych kosztów. Natomiast tą opieką jesteśmy objęci od samego początku, więc i tu w Polsce, i później w Stanach Zjednoczonych. Teraz oferta, czyli studenci, programy Graduate Student Award, czyli osoby, które są na licencjacie i na przykład aplikują o 4. i 5. rok studiów magisterskich w Stanach Zjednoczonych. To jest nie tylko pokrycie kosztów, ale całego tuition w Stanach. Tych stypendiów jest stosunkowo mało, ponieważ one są bardzo drogie, jeśli chodzi o koszty. Przed doktoratem to było właśnie moje stypendium, czyli Junior Research Award, czyli młody naukowiec, i po doktoracie. I tutaj już nie mamy ograniczeń. Senior Award, STEM Impact Award, Slavic Award. Te dwie nagrody STEM i Slavic są nieco krótsze, nawet dużo krótsze i dużo mniejsze, natomiast Senior Award jest podobnie jak Junior Research Award, czyli jest to stypendium od 4 do 10 miesięcy. Między innymi właśnie o to stypendium będę aplikował w tym roku na podstawie, znaczy w oparciu o projekt, który piszę, i moją drugą książkę, czyli The Role of US International Leadership in the Context of Ukrainian War. Programy partnerskie. Pominę te rzeczy, ponieważ zbliżamy się do końca dzisiejszego dnia, więc pozwolicie Państwo, że w ogóle na tym zakończę. Jeśli będą jakieś pytania, to chętnie na nie odpowiem przez te ostatnie 10 minut. Dziękuję.
Drodzy Państwo, czy ktoś ma jakieś pytania do naszego prelegenta? Pytań nie ma, także serdecznie dziękujemy. Tutaj, tutaj jeszcze mamy małe podziękowanie. Dziękujemy za udział. Drodzy Państwo, a my już tym samym kończymy nasz dzisiejszy drugi dzień internacjonalizacji na Uniwersytecie Marii Curie Skłodowskiej w Lublinie. Było nam ogromnie miło, że wzięliście Państwo udział w tym naszym wydarzeniu tak licznie. Pozwolę sobie przypomnieć, że jest jeszcze z nami jedna grupa, która teraz odbywa warsztaty z metodologii MBTI. Także, drodzy Państwo, dziękujemy Wam serdecznie. Robert, come to me, please. And we together say goodbye. I potem zapraszamy Państwa na lunch na poziom -1.
Okay. As we wind down this session, just remember a couple of things from some of the presentations that were made here today. You're in the right place, so make use of the opportunity. I'll reiterate this from Professor Oren and Professor Wojcicki's presentations as well. You're in the right place, the right time. You have all these wonderful people that you've met, Professor Kamil, Professor Ange. Please make use of this opportunity. So from us, thank you so much. First and foremost, for our rector. Unfortunately, he's not here because he had an engagement he had to run to, but also to our partners, the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join us for a lunch, and let's begin the other process of coincidence. Okay? Thank you.